So my name's Tom Butler. I'm a product manager here at Atlassian. I work alongside Alex and Johnny. You here, Johnny, somewhere? Yeah, Johnny. So Johnny's my dev manager, Alex, my design manager, and the product manager. We are a triad. Does everyone know what Atlassian does? I realise that you might not. Does anyone not know what Atlassian does? Yeah, no. It's a trick. There's a trick hand from the Atlassian Design System team at the back. So I'm not going to talk too much about what Atlassian does. You'll be familiar with some of our products like Jira and Confluence. We build collaboration tools for any team of any size. We seek to unlock the potential in every team. It's very exciting. I've been here 3 years. Prior to that, I was at eBay for 11 years. I'm a product manager. I don't have a background as an engineer or a designer. And I'm relatively new to the design system space. This is my second design system meetup, my first presentation at a design system meetup, my first presentation at any meetup ever. So it's very exciting again. Yeah, thanks very much. So firstly, thank you for inviting me today to speak. I'm going to take you through a few thoughts, musings. We've tried to divide and conquer between mine and Charlotte's decks, because if you ask two product managers to talk about design systems as products, you could end up with very similar presentations. I think mine's a bit different. I would probably underline, before I jump in too much, that pretty much everything Charlotte said was awesome, and are all things that either we're doing, trying to do, or would love to think about trying to do. So I think there are a lot of great takeaways and practical pieces of advice she gave. So I'll try to avoid giving the same advice twice. So I'm going to try and cover a few key takeaways. One is why platforms and systems are valuable. You might already be sold on this, but I really wanted to do some great keynote magic move animations. So we're just going to focus on that for a little bit. And that really sets up why a design system is valuable to a company generally. I'm going to talk about our design system journey. I've got one very complicated slide that you can all prepare yourselves for right now, but I'm going to talk my way gradually through it, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's really to talk about how we got to where we are over the last decade of working in the design system space on and off. I'm then going to talk about the design system product onion, which is something I made. And I couldn't come up with a better name for this thing, but really it's a framework to think about at what point does it make sense to think of your design system as a product, and maybe as a product for products, which is really where we are. And then I'm going to give you 3 questions to ask, and there's quite a bit of overlap between what Charlotte presented and what I've got there. So we may get quickly to questions. So there we go. So thinking about the value of systems and platforms, particularly as a career product manager, products and companies are generally trying to create something. They're trying to create a differentiator generally, and they would love to spend most of their time creating that differentiator in the market that sets their company or their product apart from others. And when you try and do that, you start to ask, you want to ask hard questions. These are some of the hard questions, examples of the hard questions we're trying to ask ourselves here at Atlassian. How do we become the place to create, collaborate, and share ideas? Is this even a market we should be playing in? These are hard questions. They take a long time. They take a lot of experimentation and investment from product teams up and down the company. What you actually spend a lot of your time on are things that you could look at as foundations or table stakes. Things like, to have some design system-like examples, how do we do web forms? What's the best way to do web forms? And error handling in web forms, and authentication, and privacy, and media storage, onboarding flows. All these things which will may be familiar to you if you're here at a design system meetup, thinking about design systems, or working on any kind of platform. And the practicality is, as companies get bigger, we're now something like 140 product teams across the company, across multiple locations. This piece, these things that should be shared, grow to take up more and more of your time, and you spend less and less of your time differentiating. And in fact, you get into inefficiencies. You get into multiple teams trying to solve the same things in multiple ways, and you have no way of doing pattern recognition across all of those different teams. The ideal, and really where we're trying to go at Atlassian, and you'll see it in our little story in a moment, is to invest a lot of effort in a short period of time into a lot of key platforms and systems that allow you to focus on differentiators, allow product teams to really focus on the thing that sets them apart. The kind of things that fall in there, this is just my off the top of my head list, but documentation, process, shared services, tooling, common languages. That really is what a design system is. It's a common way of talking about experiences and actually putting them into practice. How that breaks down at Atlassian, I've just used products here. I probably should have just used the product logos, but we built, over the last couple of years, a large number of cloud platforms and teams. And examples of that would be identity, data pipelines, document storage, and the design system. We built a number of platform experiences, which are things that actually touch the end users. They're not just sitting behind the scenes supporting the products, but they're actually out there. They're actually touching end users. Things like login and billing, which was my previous role at Atlassian. While the products take all of that and actually build a differentiated product in the market and bring that to end users. And what we've practically found doing that at Atlassian is you end up with some other layers to this thing. It's platforms all the way down, as they say. So Jira is a great example. Give a wave if you work at Jira. Hey, John. Hey. Jira, because Jira has multiple Jiras. There's Jira Software, there's Jira Service Desk, there's Jira Core, there's Jira Ops now. Have built their own product platform, which takes things that we build in the platform and makes them suitable for Jira and includes their own, again, differentiated, unique elements. And we have other products where they wrap the things that we provide in platform to make them more palatable to their engineers or designers as they go along. So it's really a setup, and really what that says is there is huge value of systems and platforms, not just to help with scale, but actually to help with differentiation, to actually help products create value in the market. And that's really what I connected with Design System when I came into it. I was like, wow, there's this lever we can pull, and if we get this right, we can actually be way more effective as a whole company and as lots of products. So this is my complicated slide I forewarned you about. So we're going to work our way through this from beginning to end. I thought it would be interesting. I've tried to pull some insights out of this, which are kind of the orange blobs, which will make more sense in a moment. And I'll start off with a story. Back in 2007, 2008, we acquired a company called Senqua, which it doesn't matter what the company's called. I tried to pronounce it. But the key thing about it was at that point we got to roughly 6 products that Atlassian actually had in its portfolio. They weren't cloud products at that time. They were all products that you installed on your servers in-house. But we started to have some of the problems that companies, teams who are thinking about design systems tend to have. To see duplication, to see better ways of doing things in one product but not in others. And so way back then, sort of labeled it as passion, that connection with the problem drove us to invest in building AUI, the Atlassian UI library, which was the exercise that a lot of design system teams go through early on, which is looking across all of the things you've built and trying to find the best practice and codify that somewhere, either in guidelines or in, as we did, code. So it was a UI library that we provided. And that was pretty successful. We didn't refactor all of our products to use this, but what we found over time was that as products built new features, they picked the best practice that was sitting there in AUI. And over the following arbitrary time scale, 4 and a bit years, we kept working on that. And the team grew from 1 engineer to something like 4 engineers who were just iterating on AUI, making it better and better, many, many versions created. And then there are a couple of key inflection points that happened relatively quickly past that point. So 2012, new head of design joined, Jürgen Spangl, and with him came this idea that we should not just codify the code of the way that we build experiences, but actually the intent, the thinking behind it into the Atlassian Design Guidelines. That's what this ADG 1 refers to. And for us, just stepping back, that was great. We had a senior exec sponsor who came in and said, this is the thing we need. And basically, at that point, we had a vestigial design system. We had all the pieces of it in place, the code and the design coming together. That was a project, a Marx's project. That will make more sense in a second. And over the following few years, we iterated on that. We improved it. We took what we had in that first version of the design guidelines, and just like with AUI, we improved it. We dialed it up. We made it even better for purpose. And then a series of things happened in quite quick succession. This was about the point I joined the company. First, we took these server products, these products that we've been building to be installed on people's own mainframes behind their firewalls, and we decided to not just bundle those up and sell them as cloud products as well. We decided that actually these are different target markets, and actually the cloud has a completely different ecosystem of technology around it that we should be taking advantage of. So we split the company into cloud and server. And that very quickly rolled into a lot of things that really gave birth to the design system we have today. First, we went, well, actually, now we've got all this freedom to build an amazing cloud experience and actually make our products work together. At this point, we're into double-digit products. What does that mean? So we had a project we called A2018, Atlassian 2018. It seemed very futuristic at the time, where we looked at what a cohesive, coherent experience across all of our products would actually look like. And that turned into the third iteration of our design guidelines. We also, at the time, were planning a new brand, so a rebranding of our products, and a new set of brand principles, which we also tried to incorporate into ADG3, things like being bold and optimistic, practical with a wink. All of that was a lot of change, and we realized that we were building for the cloud and not the server anymore. And so we threw away AUI, effectively. AUI went to server and continued to support our server business, and we created a new thing called Atlas Kit. And over the course of about 9 months, we started with web components, it became React. We built a 50-strong component library, which went into Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, and actually was the entire basis of our new product, Stride, which is a communications tool we launched last year. The reason this is important was this was really the formation of the cloud platform. At this point, we suddenly had a platform and services that you could build new products out of, and you could build them really quickly. And Stride was the proof point of that. Stride itself took us 9 months or something to build, and we built it entirely from this new stuff we put into the platform. And it's still the proof of the pudding that you can bring all these things together and move much faster, iterate on ideas. The cost of failure is much lower. So that was great. We announced it, we rolled it out. Hey, it's great. But it wasn't all roses as you'd expect. We moved super quickly, building this brand new UI library. The design guidelines obviously had to move super quickly. Suddenly we've got all of our flagship products all under the gun to get this new look and feel, these new experiences, this new navigation out to customers. And so that period of 9 months was a time in which we built up a huge amount of technical and design debt, which is stuff that we've been paying down ever since. We also, there's a little notes on this, I've got a great list here. We also had increased our surface area massively. Suddenly we're talking to all the cloud products, they're all asking us for stuff, they all have to adopt it, and suddenly we've got way more incoming requests, we've got way more bugs and feature enhancements and questions coming in. We still have, and John will attest to this, a lot of legacy experiences dotted throughout our products. We were never able to flick a switch and say, Jira, you're 100% ADG3 and you're only going to use Atlas Kit and React from now on. These are living, breathing cloud products with crazy numbers of applications wrapped within them. So by no means a slam dunk in terms of adoption, but in terms of the experience we gave to users, our flagship experiences did look and feel better. And as, again, John, I'm just picking John out here because I can see him and I've worked very closely with him recently. We also got some not great user feedback on some of those big, bold design choices we made. One example of that was the navigation, the new vertical navigation, which a number of us sort of broke off into a program to try and course correct. We got some feedback from certain very passionate users, which actually really rang true with us. And so we've been working for the last 9 months to both improve the UI library behind navigation so we can actually iterate and improve on things quickly. We kind of reversed ourselves into a corner. So we got out of that corner, and we've also made a number of important changes. But I think we then got a feeling for what it feels like to actually roll these big changes out across products with user feedback flooding in as you ramp up. So all of this all comes together, all looks very nice. And I'm going to make a bit more sense of my orange lozenges, which you've been wondering about. I tried to think about, and I've been chatting to a number of design systems the last couple of months. I went out to San Francisco a while ago, super lucky to meet with a few great design systems there, and obviously come to these meetups. I generally think that design systems have investment along this scale, And we've felt this scale all the way from that initial passion, a connection with a problem that someone wants to go out and solve. And some of the design systems I've met at these meetups, it's half a person who has realized that there's this challenge. We're all solving the same problems in different ways. I'm going to write some design guidelines. I'm going to build a UI library. So that, oh, hello, that's not me. I think the room just turned off.
The system restarts.
Oh, cool, the system's restarting. Does anyone have any design system jokes? You're good. All right. Oh, cool, we're back, great. That's good, because I might have come up with a joke if I'd stood here for long enough. So I won't labour on this slide too much. You've probably read it in the time I've been standing here. But I think we were very fortunate at Atlassian to have, from a very early stage, the level of investment of people. We actually had people who could evolve the thing we built, who could respond to feedback, who could actually keep the thread going throughout, rather than having a lot of sort of projects where people dip in and out you built your design system, off you go, or just a lone individual hammering away at this thing, trying to make it happen over many years. Why do I think we've got to the product stage? That's an interesting one. I'll talk about that in a moment. But I think the thing that really differentiates this stage for us at the moment is the fact that we are really having to work out how to engage with our internal customers. We're really having to be intentional about who do we talk to, what do we want to hear from them, what do they want from us, roadmap alignment over months, years, rather than the sort of reactive, just-in-time foundation we had. And the final point I'll make on this slide is we've been talking recently about, it was interesting to hear you say that you call yourself design ops, which is different positioning of the design system, but we've been talking quite a bit recently about what happens when you actually have a good design system or a better design system. Where are you going with this? And we believe that where we are going is we're trying to build better designers and engineers in the way they work together. And I think that's probably the big goal here. The highest level investment is the point at which the thing that we are doing and the thing that we all feel a connection with because we're here becomes part of the company's culture, the part of the company's ethos. We'll get there one day. We're working on it. We're some way there. Whether we'll know when we're there, I don't know. But I certainly know the heuristics of what it looks like when you get there. So here's my onion, which is, again, a bit of a reflection. So the design system product onion goes all the way from the middle out to the stuff that we would say is a product for products. So right at the core of this is what a lot of people, certainly I, when I came into the team, thought was the actual design system. I was like, oh, cool, we've got a design system, a thing called a design system. It's a UI library, and it's those guidelines. That's sweet, awesome, that's cool. It's foundations, patterns, maybe it's tokens, it's components, it's design guidelines or code. That's pretty cool. But as those of you who run a design system or have looked at design systems know, a key part of actually having a design system is how you package it up and how you bring it to your internal customers. And that's really the lever you have for scaling and adoption, particularly when you get into very large enterprises. You can't be there in every single conversation. You can't answer every single question. Your assets need to speak for themselves. And that's something that we have really realized. And I'll talk about how we've thought about that in our prioritization later. And that's really about engineering and design tooling, content design, and that goes all the way from how you name your components in your repo through to how you structure the websites you provide. Like all of that stuff needs to line up, and we're getting clearer on that now. On top of that is this other thing I alluded to earlier, which is actually the cost of ownership of a design system, which is something that scales pretty quickly. And it scales with the number of customers you have internally, the number of components you've got, the number of products you're trying to support, the number of components you've decided to build. And it manifests itself in things like bug fixes, enhancements, just the investment of face-to-face coaching and onboarding, just being there on Stride or Slack, answering questions day to day. And some of our estimates, we reckon we maybe spend 50% of our time in this area, just on the front lines, making sure that product teams are actually understanding what's in our heads quite often, rather than necessarily on a page. And then on top of that, there's me, product management and marketing. So this really is about three things for me, which I believe Charlotte iterated in her deck: customer focus, prioritization, and visibility. There is a point in the evolution of a design system at a company when it's really important to start thinking as a product, all the things that Charlotte said before: packaging, communication, and ruthless prioritization. You need to be super clear about how you're prioritizing and be able to communicate that to your internal customers. I wrote this sentence, which I think sums it up. Products thinking, it's a bit of a mouthful, in a design system aims to solve the problems of customer focus, prioritization and visibility, which arise when it reaches a critical point of scale. And I've also, because I love making diagrams and making frameworks, had a little bit of a think about what I mean by complexity. At what point do you go beyond using product thinking within your design system to thinking about products and serving products? And I don't really have a great answer, but I made this awesome slide. And the slide actually has some important points in here. And one of the companies I've been chatting to recently is Adobe, and learning a bit about their design system. And the problem space they occupy is insane. They have at least 100 products, and they say at least 100 products because there are products they haven't even found yet that have brands that have been built up in teams around the company which aren't in some central register. They have 17,000 employees, and they cover all the mobiles, all the front-end platforms. I'm quite bewildered by the problem space that they operate in, and I'm also quite enamored by the way that they ruthlessly prioritize when they think about how many components do we need to support 100 products. How do we focus even within that small group of the kernel of components, and who actually are our customers? What are the right engagement models for those customers? So they're at a completely different level. And down here, a bunch of other companies I've been talking to recently, where we operate in similar ways. I've only drawn this grey line because I think I was the only product manager I met before we got up here. So maybe here's the arbitrary becomes a product for products line. But I think overall, I'll just do my blank slide thing, I think actually looking back at that product onion is probably the best way to think about when you need to start applying real scale product thinking. It's when do you feel like you need that extra layer to the onion, and then you start bringing in some of the things I'm going to chat about in a moment. So let's get my slides running again. So these are, I'm going to pose 3 questions. I said on the blurb for my talk there'd be 5, so I hope no one is disappointed. So the first one is about customer focus. Who are your priority customers? I'll talk about the journey we went through. So when I came into the team, we not only had 50 plus components and all the tech and design debt that I mentioned, but we also had potentially all of these people as customers of ours, all asking for things, all increasing the overhead of running and maintaining the system and giving us different priorities. And what we did was quite quickly hone in on just one group here. We really are about the Atlassian cloud. We're about the engineers and designers in there. They are the actual users of this system. And that's very distinct from our end users. And that confusion, it certainly confused me when I first came to the team. Who are we designing for? Who are we building for? And it is for our internal teams. And all the others are secondary. I'll talk briefly about this. We've had a recent conversation with our server business. Because we have this focus on the Atlassian cloud and said, server, we're not supporting you, we're actually now in a really great position to actually welcome server back into the family. The server teams went out, saw what we built with Atlas Kit, with the design guidelines, and actually started organically adopting it themselves, completely self-service, occasionally submitting bugs and almost apologetically asking for us to fix them. And we're now in a great position to say, well, look, there's a great fit for what you're doing in your front end. And we've been able to talk about resourcing between those teams. So we've now expanded that part of the onion that's about support to accommodate having some of the server teams on. And they have likewise said, well, we're actually going to adopt the Atlassian design guidelines rather than have our own sort of fork of them. I thought it was worth just saying that broadly it translates implicitly into our mission as a team. We say that we make it easy to create straightforward, distinctly Atlassian experiences that users love. the users love is indirect in this statement, and the make it easy is implicitly about our internal teams. I'll probably be more explicit about this as I reflect on it. So the next one is prioritization. So I'll just talk about some of the prioritization challenges we've had in the team recently. The first one is really about where do you spend your time in these three buckets, which I've alluded to. Support and maintenance, which takes up a huge amount of our time. Extending the system, which is often what we want to do. It's the exciting stuff. It's, maybe it's new components, but now it's, new concepts, theming, and tokenization, and how do we get really awesome accessibility and responsive? How do we make all of our experiences mobile friendly? And the only way we really get there is by investing here in the middle. And that's the situation we're at. You invest in self-service and get really understand the workflows of your customers, really understand what they're doing day to day. Get that right to reduce your support maintenance to be able to invest over here. And the sort of the side insight here is because working over here just makes that first bucket harder. You're just creating more things for customers to understand and more support yourselves. I'll talk briefly about success measures, which Charlotte also touched on. We don't use adoption a huge amount at the moment. I think because we've had a bunch of adoption drives across the company, we haven't focused on it, and we also find it super hard to track. So I'd love to compare notes on that with anyone here who feels they have nailed this in a meaningful way. The things that we have been using recently are these three numbers. The website self-service, that aligns directly with where we're trying to invest. We're trying to increase the proportion of people who can just self-service from the website. Our customer satisfaction score for our internal customers. And then we also spent a while trying to work out how to partner with our products to have a joint metric around usability, end usability. And I wouldn't say that that's been a huge success, and that's partly due to these kinds of numbers. When UMUX Lite is similar to NPS, similar to other high-level system-wide metrics. It's a usability score that asks about simplicity and basically functionality within an experience. And we tried for a while to have a joint score with Jira to say, hey, we're going to raise this thing by 2 points. The actual impact we could have on that number in a meaningful timescale, what the partnership actually meant was a massive learning for us. Sure, that number changed, and we changed things, but could we see any correlation between them? No. So, and I think that is among many other metrics that we have considered tracking and have tracked over time. And I think this is a useful scale to think about things that you can measure and things that you can move, and don't pick too many things that are hard on either of those scales because you're making a rod for your own back. Adoption is really hard for us to measure and also really hard for us to move, and stopped being actually a topic of conversation quite quickly. Customer satisfaction is actually relatively easy to measure, and we've found that it isn't actually that hard to move when we focus in on it. So that's allowed us to make some big improvements in the system and the way that we package and sell it without too much work. And we also spent too much time on this, spend quite a bit of time understanding our customers' priorities as well as our own, right? So there's always, you look inside, what have we got, where do we want to go? And then you look outside and go, well, where are our customers going? We use a few things you can see here to align them. Clambakes is probably the most obscure one here. So Clambakes is a thing that we have created for the Atlassian Cloud Platform team, which sits between the top-down annual planning and the sort of day-to-day, week-to-week syncing that we naturally do with teams. And I think it's a function of a company operating at our scale, but still being agile, still having lots of autonomous teams around the company, that you can't rely purely on top-down planning to tell you what's coming up. And the Clambakes, we had two things out of them, but it's all about sharing and aligning roadmaps in quite an informal, flat way. And then finally, how will you market yourself? I actually think Charlotte articulated a lot of this really, really well. And we're only just starting to get even vaguely sophisticated about this, but think about who your targets are. We think of everyone from the end users of the system, the designers and engineers, through the triads, through to exec leadership, and they all need different messages through different channels. And we use a huge number of channels. This is just a few of them to get the messages out. So there's not really a massive insight here other than spend time thinking about who your targets are and what the right channels and messages for them I think that is the end of my deck, aside from this amazing build, which summarizes my last 3 sections. Cool. Thank you very much.